Coach, appreciate the time as always. Thanks for it. How you been?
Zach, great to be with you, and some, as you mentioned, some great games this past weekend. Looking forward to a great Sweet 16. Let me also say this: I know a lot of people are talking about the lack of upsets or the lack of exciting games, other than the Maryland Colorado State game, yesterday with the buzzer shot by Derek Queen. Here's the truth to it all: 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the mid-major schools, the players who are 22, 23, they'd be juniors and seniors, and they wanted to stay at the school. There was no portal, there was no NIL. You could just keep them as an older group of guys. And then what happens when you play a team that's from a power conference? Those teams maybe had some younger freshmen. Their roster was different, and so that's where you saw the upsets. And now, when you're at a mid-major school, or I shouldn't say a mid-major, a non-school out of the Power Four conferences, or Power Five if you include the Big East, and um, when someone who had their first year has a great year, averages 11 a game, they're going to go in the portal, and then
Yeah.
one of the schools in the Power conferences are going to pay them money to take them because they can pay them more than that current school. And so it's a combination of that. The lower seeded teams this year did not shoot well from 3-point range during the tournament. And the third thing, when you talked about Arkansas being the Cinderella team as a 10th seed, they've got maybe more NIL this year than anybody remaining in the tournament. So there's really not that many Cinderella stories. I've said it from the beginning. This tournament was going to be top heavy, and that's where it is. It's a power conference tournament in these 16 remaining teams. And even though we maybe didn't get some of the elite game, buzzer beaters, crazy games in the first couple rounds, I think we're going to get that in these next couple rounds because of the parity at that top of the food chain in college hoops.
Yeah, I said it after the first round. I thought it was an underwhelming first round, but with how many great teams are still alive, I thought it was going to be an epic Sweet 16 and on. I was very pleased, though, with the round of 32. Let's start it off, though, with Maryland. Everyone's dissecting this game-winning shot. It was an incredible ending, Maryland, Colorado State. Do you think Queen traveled? Do you ever expect that to be called in that moment?
Zach, I mean, you could slow mo it, and it looks like a travel on the slow mo. But when you watch it in real time, it does not look like a travel.
Agreed.
They talk about the word gathering or picking up the dribble. You're not going to call it. It was not an evident travel. Yes, slow mo it. It could be a travel. But some of the new rules moving forward in college basketball has been, if there's a question mark on a traveling call, if there's even a gray area, favor the offense. It's just like the block charge call. You see, there's very few charges called anymore. It's all mostly blocks because they want to favor the offense. So it was the right decision not to call it in the real time. It did not look like it, and it was a heck of a game. What was interesting was when Maryland was up and Colorado State was coming down, Maryland was in man to man. Then Colorado State called timeout. Maryland came out in zone, and Colorado State hits that three. Maryland inbounds the ball, rushes up the court, and I didn't know if Kevin Willard, the coach of Maryland, was going to take a timeout. Decided to take a timeout. They kind of run it. They called it America's play or a gate or an elevator play. Where on the side of the lane line, the guys go through two guys, and then Queen it was a decoy. Queen came up, caught it, went to his left with the shooter in the left corner, and he hit I mean, it was a great defense, but better offense. And most right-handers, Queen is a right-hander, they prefer to shoot off the dribble going to their left, and that's what Queen did, and hit an incredible shot off the backboard. It wasn't,
Yeah.
which as you know this, Zach, you covered basketball your whole life. People rarely use the backboard anymore, and that's a kind of a lost art. And it was two lost arts. He hit a mid-range shot, and he hit a shot off the backboard, which you don't see too often in basketball anymore.
Josh Pastner here with us. Coach Pitino, we all know how much of a legend Rick Pitino is, and it's incredible what he did with St. John's. But when your season ends and you're not the last team standing, you always get criticized. 5 minutes left in the game, he takes the Big East Player of the Year, R.J. Lewis, out, never puts him back in. Did you think that was a bad decision looking back at it when he didn't have it, the kid? He was 3 of 17, but would you rather go down swinging with your best, or do you understand what Coach Pitino was doing there?
Look, and you know this, Zach, as well as anybody. I mean, Coach Pitino is maybe the greatest ever to coach in college basketball. I mean, he could be considered the greatest coach ever. So I preface this to say that look, he had his reasonings why. And I think in that situation, when you're literally in a one game playoff, regardless of how bad RJ Lewis was, because look, he was terrible leading up to that point. There was no denying it. But he was Big East Player of the Year, one of the best players in the country. In my personal opinion, you just got to roll with him. And at some point, yeah, you got to maybe take him out because he was stinking up the gym and how poorly he was playing. But then in crunch time, you just got to say, hey, man, we're going to go with you. And you got to hope his stardom, his talent, his abilities take over and make a big shot or two late down the stretch. So I was surprised that he was on the bench based on who he is as a player in that crunch time situation. I don't know how Coach Pitino feels waking up the next morning, thinking, should I had him in? Yes, he wasn't good leading up to that, but you know this, Zach, with talent, great players, or even if they have in a poor game, you're probably going to usually roll with them even very late. And all they need to make is one or two shots to change the dynamics of it. It was sort of like Walter Clayton Jr. at Florida. He was a little struggling up and down, then late in the game took over. And that's kind of what great players do. And I was surprised that he wasn't in.
All right, let's get to the Arkansas side of it as Coach Josh Pastner is here with us. You know John Calipari really well, working with him back at Memphis. We'll look at the difference a year makes, and it's even more than that. I thought it was time for Coach Cal to leave Kentucky. I thought it was time for Kentucky to bring somebody else in. He goes to Arkansas. We know the connections there with the NIL money and all that stuff. I didn't see this team get into a Sweet 16 if you would have told me that a month ago or even a week ago. But it's nice to see Coach Cal, I've always been a big fan of, have this moment when a lot of people, deservedly so, the last few years were questioning him.
Well, you remember about a year ago, I was on your show and I said that, look, and this is before, right as he left, I said, I told you, look for Scott Drew to possibly the next coach of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And before anybody, and you said, Josh, I called it, which he was. They obviously went after him. They wanted him. And obviously he ended up turning it down. But it's worked out for Kentucky because Mark Popes obviously has done a great job. Yes, I think going back to John Calipari, it was probably a great opportunity for him for a fresh start, as you mentioned. What I would tell you is I think this is his best coaching job. Zach, and he said this many times, and he's funny when he says it. They were 0-5 in start of SEC play. And he says, they had us in the coffin. They just didn't put the nails down. You know what I mean? They forgot to put the nails, and we kind of pushed up the coffin, was able to come out and get fresh air. But you're 0-5 in that league. It's not like you're saying, okay, we're going to get a win here. We got two easy games here. You could literally go 0-18 in that league because of that the competition and how strong the league is. And so it's an incredible coaching job. I think the whole season got turned around, Zach, when they won at Kentucky.
Agreed.
And I think that changed everything. And I actually texted Cal this afterwards. If you saw him after the game, the way he ran from the game to the locker room and did the post-game interview, he was running and he wasn't even out of breath. That's when you know his adrenaline was running at such a level, because to win that game at Kentucky, and the guy's won so many big games in his career when you think it's not going to happen, and all of a sudden he wins games. And so for them to go to the Sweet 16, and he's said it yesterday, it's probably his most rewarding season that he's coached in all his years. The guy's a Hall of Famer. And you know what, Boogie Flan, I want to say two things on Boogie Flan. Their star freshman, who's going to be a first round draft pick. Boogie Flan, they were not playing well when Boogie Flan was playing early in the year, got injured. That's when they started turning the corner. Why? A guy like John L. Davis started understanding his role more, got the ball more. It was actually you don't want to see anyone get hurt, obviously, but it actually helped Arkansas when Boogie Flan wasn't playing. It shortened the rotation. Some older guys got the ball in their hands, Wagner and John L. Davis, where they needed to, and they produced. And then secondly, Boogie Flan, credit to Boogie Flan, plays his first game after all season long being injured, plays his first game coming off the bench in the first round of the tournament. He doesn't need to play. He's going to be a first round pick. But you know what? Credit to him. He wasn't worried about what the NBA was saying. It could hurt his stock, anything like that. He wanted to play, and I thought that showed a lot of character of him and competitive excellence. because as you know, Zach, a lot of guys you see it in football or whatever, they don't want to play because they don't want to mess up their draft situation. He could have easily done that by him playing. I thought showed a lot about him as a competitor.
And it's also pretty neat when you look back at it because usually, right, one team wins, one team loses in sports, Josh Pastner. To see Mark Pope then go to Kentucky once Arkansas ended up getting Cal, and then also you had Kevin Young replace Mark Pope at BYU. To see all three of those schools in the Sweet 16 now, I think it's pretty neat stuff, and it's a special storyline to kind of follow the rest of March.
Well, it all started when the coach at SMU, Rob Lanier, who's now the head coach at Rice, who's a very good basketball coach, was very successful at Georgia State and was doing a nice job at SMU, but then was let go unexpectedly. Nobody saw that coming. And like I said, he's now the head coach at Rice, which had then allowed Andy Enfield to be hired at SMU, which opened up USC for Eric Musselman to go to USC, Cal to go to Arkansas because Musselman left Arkansas. That brings in Mark Pope from BYU to Kentucky, and then Kevin Young from the Phoenix Suns, top assistant NBA, who was involved with a possible New Jersey Nets job or some NBA jobs, or the Brooklyn Nets, and he turned that down to go to BYU, and that was the dominoes of it all. Just funny how dominoes work in the coaching ladder.
No doubt about it. I thought Auburn was also a big winner this weekend. I would have, if you would have asked me a month ago who's going to the championship game, I would have said Duke up against Auburn. Sign me up. And then the way that their season ended, losing 3 out of their last 4, even though the SEC is unbelievable, I was questioning Auburn a little bit. What they did up against Creighton, not only was I very impressed by it, I think the world had a Dusty May, and they won't go down without a fight. Beard and Izzo are phenomenal, but now I'm kind of back on the train that Auburn's going to be getting to the Final Four. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think the 4 teams are going to be Auburn, Florida, Houston, Duke. I think Houston wins it all, but I do think Duke's really good, Zach. I mean, they're at another level right now.
I can't pick against them right now. I can't pick against Duke.
No. And I pick in Houston just because I kind of went with them at the beginning. But I think Duke's really good. And I picked Houston because I wasn't sure about Cooper Flagg's health going into the tournament. Watching them play, if I could redo my whole picks, I would pick Duke. That they're going to win the whole thing. They've got obviously got the #1 draft pick in Cooper Flagg. They got multiple pros. They got older guys. The only thing with Houston that concerns me is that they're playing in Indianapolis. They're playing Purdue, which is going to be really a road game for Houston on this weekend. And then if they get by that, Tennessee and Kentucky advance to the Elite Eight, and Houston's playing them. That's going to the fans are driving distance to Indianapolis from there. That could be the only thing that would scare me on Houston of getting out. But I still think Houston's so good. That all being said, if I could redo it over, seeing now the Cooper Flagg, the health that he's healthy, I just can't see Duke not winning the whole national title.
You know how tough it is in that SEC this year, and you've talked about this. People are going to say, everyone's analysis, Kentucky and Tennessee, it's so tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. Make the argument to me why Kentucky can do that, and they could hand Tennessee their 3rd loss of the season up against Kentucky.
Yeah, I would put it, Zach, I think you would have to throw that stat out for this particular time. I think it maybe matters when, maybe in a conference tournament, because, 3 times and, no matter what happens, you're going to play again in the NCAA tournament. It's not the end. I think for that stat, a 3-time deal, you kind of throw it out based on it's do or die for either team. The loser's done, the winner advances. So you're kind of just starting fresh. It's a 1-game playoff. So I don't put as much stock in beating a team 3 times in this situation because it's a neutral court. It's a different deal. That being said, it's all going to come down to, can Kentucky defend at a high level, take out Ziegler and Chaz Lanier, and obviously Gainey's really good, but being able to guard that backcourt, which Kentucky has had struggles this year on the defensive end. It's never been about offense. It's been about, can they win? To me, if it was a muck it up, grind it out, tough, hard-nosed, ugly game, can they win that through defense? That's to be determined. That could be the game against Tennessee. I do think Tennessee gets by them when it's all said and done. Yes, Tennessee lost both of them. And if you look back at both games when Kentucky beat Tennessee, Kentucky's offense was zooming and zipping. And I mean, the way they were moving the ball and hitting threes, you've got to imagine Tennessee is going to be just different in how they prepare and what they're going to do, and really try to be as physical as possible against Kentucky. Both teams are familiar with each other, but I do like, in the end, I do like Tennessee in this game.
Wrapping up with Josh Pastner, it's tough to be able to find a team right now that's been playing better than Florida entering the tournament. They got a scare up against UConn, but I feel like whenever a team wins a national championship, for most of the time, I know UConn could be an exception with what they've done the last few years, you usually get a scare and win a game that you should probably lose. You knew Hurley was not going to go down without a fight. It was incredible how much control they were in the game, but what Florida did in those final few minutes, I thought that was maybe the most impressive thing they've done all season. And I understand they just won the SEC conference tournament.
Well, Zach, I always say that to win a national championship, you have to go through a scary, just tough, hard nosed game where you think you're about to lose. It's just like it was just a scary game. One of the exceptions, one of the few exceptions, which you make a great point, is the non-stress that UConn had the last 2 years winning a national title. They really had no stress. It was surreal. They were never tested really, other than the San Diego State game, which was like within 5 points late. Other than that, it was nothing. They were dominating every game. So for Florida to get by a high-stressed game and they were down and found a way to win, I do think is a good sign for Florida. You're right, Zach. They're the hottest team in the country coming into this tournament. They are very deep. They've got great players. They've obviously got a great guard in Walter Clayton Jr. You need to have a scare. They got through their scare. I don't see they're going to have any more scares getting into San Antonio in the Final Four.
I know Dan Hurley is not everybody's cup of tea, as I'm holding a cup of tea right now in my hands. But with that being said, I love Dan Hurley. I love his antics. I say this.
Zach, you need a character in college basketball, and he's a good character. You need that. A lot of those guys have retired. So, and I don't say a character in a bad way. Like his enthusiasm, his work in the referees, some of the things he says. You need that. And you know what?
He's the king of the sport. It's polarizing, and you need that. You need a personality coach.
He's polarizing. He's got the personality. He's won back-to-back national champion. I mean, winning one national championship's hard. Winning back-to-backs, literally, you have a better chance of winning the lottery. So he's going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, I get it. You can criticize. There's things that he can be better at, but you know what? We don't need it to be a boring sport either. You know what I mean? And college basketball should be about the coaches. Listen, it's a player's game, but you get what I'm saying. You need some personality on the sideline, and he can back it up with all he's got to do is pull out his rings.
Yeah. Two rings, Baldy, as he said, walking off the court against Creighton. That actually may be my favorite answer you gave us, because I didn't even get to finish asking the question. You already knew what I was going to ask you. All righty. Coaching cycle, then we'll let you run. Indiana got DeVries, Sean Miller, Texas, Will Wade, NC State, Ryan Odom, Virginia. I'll be curious to see what Villanova does. What stands out to you so far in this crazy college coaching cycle?
Well, there early on, there were just some things hiring some former NBA guys coming. Obviously Alex Jensen at Utah, assistant with the Dallas Mavericks. Luke Lucas, something like, I don't want to mispronounce his name, at Florida State, who was a Sacramento former alum. Both guys are alums of their schools, respectively, coming from the Sacramento Kings. But look, this is part of the cycle. Villanova's open right now. West Virginia's open right now, which will create some other dominoes. Colorado State's open right now. So those will create some other dominoes. It's all part of the deal. And we'll see what happens as more people get hired. Xavier's open. It's part of it. So we'll see if Chris Mack has ended up being the Xavier coach again. I could see Luke Murray's in there, possibly the assistant at UConn. I could see his name there. We'll see what Villanova. You've heard Richard Pitino, Kevin Willard. You've heard guys like that. So it's going to be an interesting domino effect over the next 7-10 days, and I'm sure people are going to want to start getting these hires moving and going, because the portal's open and you want to recruit your team.
Villanova, I think, is fascinating. Because, if you look at a Porter Moser, I think he's a better fit at Nova than Oklahoma.
I've heard his name too. His name too, yep.
Yeah, and I think Mick Cronin is a better fit at Villanova than UCLA. Willard, I would stay at Maryland. I'll be fascinated if Cronin or Porter get that job, if they leave the good jobs that they're at right now for Nova.
And I've heard Cronin's name too. But, a lot of those things too, Zach, you got to remember, like some guys, you got to look at their buyouts. I mean, some guys could have double digit buyouts, 10, 12 million, or even 7 million. Like, is a school willing to pay?
Good point.
So names could be mentioned, but okay, are you really going to pay someone a buyout of 6, 7, 8 million to get a coach? That's a lot of money to spend that plus give the new coach, plus you've had to fire the coach, plus the NIL. So I think before names are being mentioned, people really need to study the buyouts of where people's at, because you start getting, listen, $3 million is a lot of money, but you and I it was a lot of money, but a $3 million buyout for a school to
A
maybe
lot
get
of money to me, maybe not for you.
no, it's a lot of money for me. Listen, hey, $20 is a lot of money for me, but 3 million buyout, 2 million buyouts, a little easier for a school. It's still a lot of money than when you're sitting there saying, "Hey, this coach is going to cost me 7 or 8 just to get him out of his contract." And I don't know in the end, do presidents and our schools say, "Hey, can we really do this financially? Are we really, because that's a big commitment to get someone to come from school. Can we, or get another coach that's maybe a lesser buyout, and can we get the same results?" Those are things that the presidents and athletic directors and the board of trustees have to ask.
Do you want to coach again, or with this NIL and transfer portal, you're like, I'm good on TV?
I love doing TV, but yes, I would love to coach again if it's the right opportunity. I've taken 2 schools to the tournament, have won championships at both schools. I would like to take a third. I'd like to have another opportunity. I love television. So I'm not just going to leave TV just for the heck of it, because as you know, Zach, the opportunities I've had in television are hard to get. But if there was the right opportunity, I would be all in to try to have an opportunity to coach again. If somebody felt I was the right fit for them, and I felt they were the right fit for me. So, and I would have, me, because I'm a positive guy. I think I look at the portal as an opportunity, the NIL, in a good way. And I think I'd be really good at it because it's so much now, more so than ever. You're just dealing with people.
Yeah.
It's more so than ever a people's business. And yes, and you still got to coach and do and develop players, but there's other things that I like about it, that is, it can, even with the dealing with the agent, it just streamlines everything. Instead of spending 3, 4 years recruiting a high school guy and then chasing him at 15 and under, 16 and under, 17 and under, going to here, going to there, fine, which I loved. I love that. No problem. Now you don't have to do that. You just call the agent and say, "Hey, do we have a shot? What's it going to be? What's the contract? How much does he want?" And you can just streamline recruiting instead of 3 years basically into 3 weeks. I think it's way more efficient now. Yes, there's some things that are maybe not as good about it, but it's way more efficient, and you can streamline a lot of stuff, and you can save so much more time than ever before, where you're tracing kids for 3, 4 years and not getting them. And you're like, it was exhausting to do that and then not get the kid. Those things were gut punches because they were like a family member to you, the time and effort you spend. Now you just figure out, you go right to the point, right to the source, and within literally in 3 weeks if you're getting the kid or not.
He's Josh Pastner. Josh, appreciate the time as always. You're unbelievable whenever you join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate you.